How do filmmakers safely film explosions so close to actors? A lot of the explosions are gasoline-based, big fireball, but not a concussive shockwave that would normally do a lot of damage to a human. Not saying it's not dangerous, but the primary concern is the heat which gels, fire-resistant suits, etc., can be used to mitigate the harm to a stunt person. The other element is camera tricks. When long focal lengths are used, it compresses the foreground and background elements. Our eyes are most similar to 50 mm. 35 mm is another standard focal length. If you use 100 to 200 mm or more, you'll compress all the elements in the frame to appear closer together than they truly are. This helps to sell the proximity to the explosion, along with the angle of the elements. To add on to the explosives, there is a big difference between high explosives and low explosives. You can watch some YouTube videos about the difference and see how different they are. A lot of movie scenes aren't realistic either. Like if you throw a grenade in real life, you don't get a massive fireball, more or less a big boom and smoke. In movies, they rig it with low explosives to get that satisfying. How do people ride a bike without holding onto the handlebars? The front fork of the bike is slanted. If the front wheel turns slightly, the rest of the bike leans to the opposite side. This forces the front wheel to turn the other way, which then pulls the bike back upright. In order to achieve this, you would start with bracing your core, cheeks, and thighs. Use hip as balance pivot, build momentum, ride with no hands. Speed and frame geometry will have an impact on how easy it is, but it's doable on pretty much any bike. Why does VPN slow down devices? VPNs route all of your data through the VPN servers, instead of going directly to the internet. This detour can cause a significant slowdown, especially if the VPN servers aren't as fast as your internet connection, or there isn't a fast enough connection from your internet connection to the server. You can try different VPN servers and services to see if you get better speeds, but in reality, VPNs are better at allowing you to spoof your location than they are at actually hiding your identity. How does ice evaporate in a freezer? If you leave a tray of ice in the freezer and forget it there for a few weeks, the ice cubes will be considerably smaller. How do they manage to evaporate when the water is in a solid form? Through a process called sublimation. Matter can skip phase changes if the conditions permit. In the freezer fridge, it is very dry. Even though the water is frozen, it still has a vapor pressure. Those little water molecules are still vibrating in that ice, and with the water vapor pressure so low in the freezer, it's low enough to allow molecules of water to break off the ice and go right into vapor. Ever wonder how things also get covered in a frost in there? Same reason. Your ice sublimates and then it gets deposited. Why do animals still get terrified of thunder and the sound of lightning, despite so many years of evolution? Shouldn't they be used to it by now? It's quite simple. Being scared of thunder isn't life-threatening, but not being scared of loud noises can be. Evolution has trained them to be afraid. Lightning is a killer to wild animals. Think of hundreds of thousands of years of being killed by lightning versus a couple hundred of having a safe place to be. Insects have minuscule brains, but still seem to know exactly what to do. How's that possible? The parts of your brain that makes you pull your hand back from a flame take up very little space in that really big brain of yours. Yet it is way bigger than that of an insect, because you are way bigger than an insect. Most of our brain is used for processes that are not present in insects. Basic instinctual and autonomous behaviors take up really little space in comparison. We also still don't fully understand how intelligence works. There are unicellular organisms exhibit signs of intelligent behavior in groups. They solve puzzles and even remember things. When mentally ill people become paranoid, why do they generally share similar delusions? Paranoid schizophrenia sends the pattern-seeking impulse of the human brain into overdrive. Seeing connections that don't exist means seeing commonalities between unrelated people, and the only logical explanation for these commonalities is that those people are secretly working together in history before mass media and the idea of an omnipresent surveillance state. Delusional, paranoid people would often think they were getting messages from God. The flavor of that sort of delusion has changed over time. What besides the government or God could orchestrate the huge conspiracies they think they see. Train muscles in isolation at the gym when we never use them in isolation in real life. This is actually why you are not supposed to just train in isolation. You should also do exercises called compound movements, which are types of exercise that train many groups at once. A common example is a squat. Squats work many groups in the legs and lower back. But when you train compound groups, there will always be one or two muscles that put in most of the effort, while other less major muscles don't get as much work. So you need to do isolation movements to get those groups if your goal is to make all muscles stronger. You also do isolation exercises when you are first starting out because you might not even have the strength to do compound exercises yet. Going with the squat example, maybe you have a weak lower back and want to protect it until it gets stronger. So you just do the different leg isolation machines until your legs are strong enough to do more of the work. You train the major groups one by one in isolation and then attempt compound movement at a later date. Also, there are other practical reasons. For example, biceps tend to not get worked out very much in most compound movement exercises, so you would just go do bicep curls on their own to balance muscle ratios. Also, aesthetics. Some people find certain muscle groups more visually pleasing, so they will put more isolated effort into developing those groups. Competitive bodybuilders do this. What did people do before soap was invented when dealing with raw meat or using the bathroom? They got sick a lot more often. For example, the physician Ignaz Semmelweis introduced the concept of doctors washing their hands before assisting in childbirth, and the maternal mortality rate dropped from 18% to less than 2%. Internal parasites were also much more common, as were diseases from unclean water. Life was pretty gross. Ignaz was chastised to insanity for his introduction of this new concept. His fellow doctors at the time gawked at the idea that their hands would be dirty and carry germs around, their doctoral, noble hands. He spent his final years writing open letter after open letter begging doctors to wash their hands, only to be met by mockery. He ended up institutionalized and beaten by his guards, where he died from a blood infection likely due to his wound. What does be there or be square even mean? Square means not cool, not hip. Be there or be square means you can either be there or you can be boring and uncool and not be there. Also, it rhymes, so it's catchy, so people repeat it. Smell metals from a distance. Since something has to physically touch our smell receptors, is the metallic object constantly releasing particles into the air? Usually, metal smells are caused by something reacting with the metal, skin oils reacting with coins, or the metal being a large part of something else that can be released in the air, the metallic smell of blood. Solid metal by itself is too stable to naturally give off the tiny airborne particles necessary for you to smell. Even when it breaks apart in microscopic pieces, it likes to break into relatively big chunks that are much too big and heavy to become suspended in air. Metal can be heated enough to become a vapor that can be smelled, but inhaling that is very, very bad. Why do athletes from different track and field events all run in a specific way, unique to their discipline? It's performance related. Every jumping discipline requires your body to be in a particular position when you make the leap, so you run with the twin goals of 1, being at the right speed at the right time, and 2, having your body be in the right position at the right time. For example, for a long jump, you basically want to be going as fast as possible, except that you have to be able to leap slightly upward. A sprinter can lean forward toward the end and thus go slightly faster, but as the jumper, you have to get your center of gravity a little more under you. Thus you run differently so you don't lean too far and are unable to get the elevation that allows you to translate speed into distance. For high jumps, you aren't directly translating speed into height, so you run to get the right level of momentum while maintaining your body lean, such that you can maximize your vertical power and jump as high as possible. If you ran too fast, you'd end up out of position and be able to jump lower, but what is Cloudflare and why does it affect the internet so much when it goes down? All right, imagine the internet is like a giant city and websites are like stores in that city. Now, to keep those stores safe from robbers, traffic jams, and power outages, many of them hire the same security guard company. That company is called Cloudflare. Cloudflare's job is to protect stores from bad guys, like hackers or spam. Help cars, like your game data, get to the store faster, keep things running even if the store's front door breaks. Because they're really good at this, a ton of stores, websites, game servers, apps rely on them. But here's the problem. If Cloudflare trips over a power cord, goes down, all the stores that hired them suddenly can't open their doors or serve customers. That's why when Cloudflare has issues, it looks like half the internet broke, because a lot of it depends on that one company. So, in kid terms, Cloudflare is the superhero guard dog keeping a huge part of the internet safe and speedy. But if that dog takes a nap, everything it was guarding gets a little messy. Lose your ability to taste food if you get a sickness that affects your nose, even though your tongue is healthy. The most important distinction is that there is a difference between taste and flavor, although they are used somewhat interchangeably. There are 5 different tastes that the taste buds on our tongue can identify: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and savory, or umami. The taste buds on our tongue are responsible for identifying these different tastes. Flavor, however, is primarily driven by our nose. Our noses are incredibly sensitive to smells. It's estimated that humans can detect 1 trillion different smells. The smell of something before we bite in provides us with information about the flavor of the food. This is added and enhanced by chewing. When we chew our food, we release more odor chemicals inside the food, which travels through the back of our throat and hits our nose from behind. This is called retronasal olfaction. Essentially, we get smells from our mouth traveling up to our nose. When we're sick, our nose is blocked, and most of that smell data doesn't get passed along to our brain from either side of our nose. We can't inhale because of a stuffy nose, so we don't smell the food beforehand. And the retronasal pathway is blocked too. Our taste buds are working fine, so we can still get broad taste like sweet or sour, but the fine-tuned flavor. How does anesthesia make you lose consciousness? We don't know 100%, but we have a very good idea. On the most basic level, it keeps the neurons from activating normally, hyperpolarize. On a less basic level, this interrupts the brain circuits that are used for consciousness, memory formation, reflex to pain, spinal reflexes. Good thing it's reversible. Imagine a group of ants. They're together, working together, doing something together. Remove the ability for each individual ant to talk to the others and it gets lost. It'll wander on its own, doing nothing of consequence. That's basically what general anesthesia does. Why do domesticated horses need horseshoes, but wild horses are fine without? There is a couple reasons, but let's start with the first thing. They don't need shoes. Shoes just help keep them healthy. The same way that we don't technically need shoes, but we wear them for extra support. There is a couple of other things. Wild horses wouldn't be walking around on a farm that has different surfaces than they would have evolved to walk on. I've seen parts of nails get embedded in a horseshoe that can just be replaced. That would be much worse if it went directly into the horse. It also helps for medical attention. Say a horse gets an infection in its foot and can't put as much weight on part of it. You can design a shoe so more weight will go to the other side of the foot. It's specialist work, but it's useful. They're also useful for keeping a hoof together if it cracks. And for those who have never had a horse, hoof care is a huge part of horse health care, and hoof problems can be crippling and possibly fatal. Unlike a dog or a cat who can live a relatively normal life without one foot or leg, a horse that has lost a foot cannot walk and likely will need to be euthanized as a compassionate measure. They're just too heavy to survive on 3 legs. If you have a horse, you need to regularly clean their hooves to check the frog, the structure in the middle of the bottom of their hoof, for stones or other debris. You need a farrier to come regularly to trim their hooves and ensure they don't become overgrown, because domesticated horses don't usually travel enough to wear their hooves down. And if you exercise them on anything other than meadows, you probably need to get them shod by a farrier and have their shoes inspected and maintained when their hooves are trimmed. If you're thinking that all of these problems are unique to domesticated horses, they're not. Wild horses just die if they suffer from hoof problems untreated. Minor infections from an injured frog can end up progressing and dissolving bone, which is crippling. Taylor Swift need to buy her masters. When talking about music ownership, there are two aspects of it: the song in the abstract, the lyrics, chords, composition. The artist will generally keep the rights to this in perpetuity. A specific recording of a song, this is what is recorded in a studio and you hear on your speakers. The record label will usually own the rights to this. When you buy an album or play a song on Spotify, or the song is licensed for an ad or movie, etc., it's really #2 that is being sold, since that is the actual recording, so the record label is making all the money off it, and the artist is being paid a royalty as stipulated in their contract. This royalty is pennies on the dollar, if lucky, and is where all the controversy of underpaid artists arises. When Taylor Swift became basically the biggest artist in the world, she realized she was getting a raw deal, since she didn't own any of her insanely profitable recordings. So she firstly re-recorded a bunch of her old albums and started streaming them directly, bypassing the record label. And secondly, she eventually bought the rights to her old recordings from the label for something like $360 million. Why is NASA mission control in Houston, Texas, 1,000 miles away from where rockets launch? Florida was chosen for launches primarily because it was closer to the equator. This makes it more fuel efficient to launch rockets. It's also right next to the Atlantic, which is convenient if a rocket fails and has to crash somewhere. The French launch rockets from South America for the same reasons. This is also why Baikonur Cosmodrome was built in Kazakhstan. It's closer to the equator than, say, Moscow, and it's pretty remote, so plenty of room for a missile to crash, and harder for Western intelligence to spy on it. Texas was chosen for mission control for NASA, partly for political reasons. President Lyndon Johnson was from Texas, partly because it was close to a number of high-end universities, which is good for scientific research and staffing, and partly because of the good weather. So there's less chances of communication. Why does water at human temperature feel really good, but air at human temperature feels stifling? Because water is good at transmitting heat. Your body produces heat and needs to cool down, but not too much. Water that is slightly colder than you will still work fine in cooling you down, while air won't. As soon as you get further away from body temperature, water will become unbearable, while air will still be relatively tolerable. Take a sauna of 90 degrees Celsius, 190 degrees Fahrenheit, or chilly weather of 5 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, outside. Those are uncomfortable but fairly tolerable for a while. However, water of those temperatures is much more uncomfortable to downright harmful. This property is also used in systems that use water cooling. Your body generates heat, so to maintain your 98.6 degree temperature, it has to give off as much heat as it generates. Air is a poor conductor of heat, so it has to be a fair amount cooler than your body to comfortably remove enough heat. Water is a better conductor of heat, so water that is even slightly cooler than body temperature will cool you pretty well. Water above your body temperature will not cool you. In fact, you will overheat pretty quickly because your sweat won't evaporate, which is one of the main ways your body can cool itself when the air is warmer than body temperature. Comet didn't actually hit the Earth, but got close enough that the tail passed through the Earth's atmosphere. It would cause a meteor shower. Many meteor showers are just the Earth passing through the remnants of a comet's tail. For example, the Orionid meteor shower that is coming up next month was caused by Why are there so many different types of vitamin B, but not for other letters? Vitamins are biological molecules that are not able to be created by the human body and which you need in small quantities for proper health. Inorganic compounds like iron, calcium, etc., as well as macronutrients, proteins, carbs, fats, etc., are excluded. The vitamins were classified by letter during the early 1900s, before we knew what the chemicals physically looked like. At first, we mainly figured them out by looking at the different diseases caused by deficiency. For example, scurvy is caused by lack of vitamin C. Over time, we discovered that some vitamins were actually multiple very different compounds, so we started creating sub-assignments under the letter. That's how we got some of the Bs. There were also some vitamins that we later discovered weren't actual vitamins, or were so similar to other vitamins that they didn't really deserve their own letter. Vitamin H was renamed to B7. Vitamin F ended up being a type of fat. That's why there are so many weird holes in the vitamin naming system nowadays. How is it possible to dig tunnels under major waterways without being crushed and/or flooded? How does water not eventually permeate down there? There's various methods, and it's all dependent on the makeup of the soils between the waterway bottom and the tunnel, as well as the natural groundwater table in the area, whether it is below the tunnel being drilled or not. Essentially, yes, the water from the waterway permeates down through the soils into the tunnel. The question is, at what rate does the water perk down through the soils? If it's too fast, it will have to be handled in some way, like pumps to evacuate the water. In the event the soils are a stiffer clay, the hole likely holds itself open and lets very little water through. If it's loose and sandy or rocky, it'll be unstable and want to collapse as soon as the drill is moved. If the hole is unstable such that it may collapse and a really large diameter, a giant boring machine, TBM tunnel boring machine, grinds through, creating the cavern, but at the same time, it cases the hole with slabs of concrete piece by piece as it inches forward very slowly. The concrete slabs get concreted together into a structure. It's less of a drill bit and more of an enormous machine, like a train with many functions. Maybe it is a fully submerged wet hole. Use a slurry of bentonite to fill the hole while a drill pushes forward. The slurry is stout enough to hold the hole open, and then a pipe is pulled through. Smaller type holes for things like pipes, not a roadway tunnel. Lots of crazy ways it gets done. There was one where the soils were going to get too unstable as the TBM advanced along because there wasn't much soil between the tunnel and the buildings and river, etc. above. Some genius figured out frozen soils are often hard as solid rock, so he figured out how to use the top of the machine to freeze the soils above the tunnel. So hard to sleep when you haven't done anything all day, even if you were resting because you're tired. It is because you're not tired, you are just psychologically conditioned to believe it's time to sleep. Michael Sifry experimented on himself by spending extended periods of time in caves and discovered that without any reference for time, that his sleep schedule varied wildly with him, sometimes perceiving a day as much as 50 we see living in our kitchens, bathrooms, and the sewers are such hardy creatures. Why don't we see large populations of them in gardens and woods where there's plenty of moisture and food? Cockroaches are hardy, fast animals that can move fast and get in the nooks and crannies of our houses. Plenty of refuge, food, easy access, and very importantly, stable temperatures and weather. In nature, they're fast-moving meals, and house cockroaches can get big and therefore big targets. Birds, reptiles, and stuff that see them will be thankful. Why does it take forever for hot water to reach the shower? The water in the hot water heater is hot. The water in the pipes in between the hot water heater and your shower has cooled down since the last time you used it. It takes time for the hot water to push all that cold water out. Most people also don't turn the valve to full hot, which means that water is moving relatively slowly. The way to get hot water to the shower fast is to turn the valve to all the way hot, wait for it to warm up, and then turn it to your preferred setting. Plus, the pipe itself has to get up to the temperature of the hot water before you get the full temp to the shower, and the shower is often one of the furthest things from the water heater. Water heater in basement and shower on the second floor. How do scientists know what the inside of planets like Earth or Jupiter is made of if we can't drill that deep? We can measure how large other planets are, and by tracking their orbit, we can use physics to calculate how much total mass it has. With size and mass, we can then calculate the average density of the planet. That already says a lot about its composition. For Jupiter, the average density is 1,300 kilograms per cubic meter, so only a bit denser than water. This would not be possible if Jupiter was a rocky planet like ours, so we deduce that it is mostly gas, also called a gas giant. By looking at the light coming from a planet, we can also get some insights into what its most common elements are. Kinda like how if you see something blue in the distance, you know it's water, but then way more advanced, and also looking at light from outside the visible spectrum. This way we know that Jupiter is mostly hydrogen and helium. Then there are some more things that can be investigated, either from Earth or by sending probes. We managed to measure that Jupiter has a very strong magnetic field, so that means that there has to be something conductive in the core. Combining with the other observations, we predict that it is likely metallic hydrogen. Giraffes not pass out every time they bend down to drink water. They have a sort of meshwork of small veins and arteries, the rete mirabile, which acts a bit like a sponge that slows down the blood flow. Giraffes have one-way valves in their neck vasculature, similar to the ones found in human legs. This prevents drastic screens in even luxury cars, often so laggy. What prevents them from just investing a couple $100 more to install a faster chip? Components in cars have to deal with a much wider range of temperatures and operating conditions than, say, your tablet or phone. In some places, like here in Canada, winters can mean that my car's screen sees 35°C in the dead of winter and plus 35°C in the heat of summer. They're expected to last at *least* until the car's 3 to 5 years warranty is up, and the same for the little computers that drive the screens. Add to that the fact that the computers are buried in the dash with no active cooling, that they have to run on the car's 12-volt system without putting too much strain on it, and that they are designed and ordered years before the car hits showroom floors. You've got to have components that can be procured by the hundreds of thousands, that are already mature enough to have known reliability, and to work within the constraints of a car environment. Things are improving, but the tech in car infotainment systems will always be 5+ YRs behind the curve because they're simply dealing with a different set of requirements than the other equipment. Why is bread harder after heating it up and cooling it down than after doing nothing? The heat drives the moisture out of the bread. This makes it feel softer while it's warm, but once it cools back down to room temperature, it's now back where it started, but with even less moisture. A large part of what makes bread hard is starch. As the bread dehydrates, that starch gets stiff and hardens. When you heat up the bread, some of the moisture from inside the bread rehydrates the starch on the outside of the bread, making it soft again. What is happening when a body part goes numb and falls asleep and then gets pins and needles when blood flow comes back? It's from pinched nerves. The nerves no longer can send signals back, so you can no longer feel. Your brainstem and brain begin to wonder where that signal went off, and results in the pins and needles. Imagine it like this. You're listening to the radio in the car at a nice normal volume, and all of a sudden you lose the radio station. It just goes silent, so you decide to turn the volume up a little bit. You still don't hear anything. You turn it up a little bit more, you still don't hear anything, so you turn it up a bit more, and now it's at max. You still don't hear anything. Then all of a sudden, the radio station comes back a few minutes later and you forgot to turn the volume back down. And it's really loud. Please turn the volume down. And you frantically try to turn the volume back down until it's normal again. That moment of, wow, everything is so loud, is similar to the pins and needles you feel. It's your brain feeding super high volume background noise into your consciousness, and it's super uncomfortable. It takes a few minutes for the feedback system to alter its baseline back to normal. It's an example of a gain control circuit within our central and peripheral nervous system. Virus is considered alive. One of the key traits of life is the ability of an organism to respond to its environment, i.e., take actions, or change its behavior in some way based on what might help it survive. It's sometimes called sensitivity to stimuli. It's easy to see how animals do this. Even bacteria move around under a microscope, and plants will even grow and shift toward light sources. But viruses are purely passive. They're just strange, complex lumps of DNA that float around and reproduce purely by stumbling across cells to hijack. No matter how you change the environment of a bacteria or virus, or how you might try to stimulate it, it just sits there, doing nothing, until the right chemical molecule happens to bump up against it, and then it's reproductive. How is peach flavoring so easily captured in gummies, water, etc., when so many other flavors taste obviously fake? Peaches have less chemical complexity than something like a watermelon, for instance. With a peach, scientists have discovered the right set of flavor molecules, sometimes referred to as esters, that create the proper taste of a peach. I also believe the main molecular component that gives a peach its taste can be used as a food additive, like the molecule found in apples. In contrast, the flavor molecule that makes up the most common watermelon taste, red innards, green rind, is referred to as an aldehyde and isn't as simple. This molecule is too unstable to be made into a food additive. To top it off, watermelons, like bananas, have an incredibly rich and complex flavor profile in terms of chemical makeup. You also have far more varieties of a watermelon, also like bananas, than you do a peach, making it ever the more complicated. Unless somebody finds something that mimics the watermelon aldehyde properly, or can create a stable compound using it, you're stuck with not really watermelon-flavored watermelon candy. What is the engineering and design behind M-chips that gives it better performance than Intel chips? Imagine that whatever processor is a house, Intel has had this house for 30+ years and has had lots of different families living in it. They also don't know exactly who is going to live there next. Because of this, the bathroom has 2 sinks, a shower, a bathtub, a toilet, an Asian-style toilet, a sauna and a steam room. The garage has space for 2 cars, a boat, an RV and 5 motorcycles. It has a huge water line, solar, and a backup generator just in case. There is a nursery in case of baby, 3 bedrooms and 2 offices. This all takes up a bunch of room, and some of the fixtures aren't all that new. But until they know who is going to live there next, they don't know if it's worth upgrading them, if they aren't going to get used, and they can't remove anything in case one of the old families comes back to visit. Apple gets to build a new house and pick exactly who is going to live there. They know it's going to be 2 people who never use the sink at the same time. They like Western-style toilets, never take showers, and are fine with just solar. They own 2 cars and a motorcycle, and they are both afraid of boats. Only one of these people works at home, so 1 office, and they always get takeout, so they don't even need a kitchen. Apple's house is smaller, easier to cool in the summer, needs a smaller water main, and all the fixtures are new. It's perfect for this one family they picked, and really not what anyone else is looking for. But sometimes make you feel ravenously hungry, even when you're also nauseous. Your body needs water and nutrients to get rid of the poison you drank yesterday. It's working overtime and needs fuel, but your brain is also telling you that something you've been drinking recently is poisonous and you should stop. Also, a lot of times when you're feeling hungry, you're actually thirsty and your body is doing everything it can to get you to do something about it before dehydration starts or gets worse. Why do many pop songs have so many different songwriters listed? Studios that produce pop music typically have in-house songwriters. They might work collaboratively, they might reuse ideas from each other's work, they might even dig up unused lyrics written by someone else and add their own elements. Some people say that pop music is produced in an assembly line. Why do ships have circular windows instead of square ones? For the same reason that airplanes have roundish windows. The structure of a ship is put through a lot of changing stresses, both in the sense of the ship being heaved and twisted by waves, and in some cases, having actual water pressing against the portholes. The corners or square windows are a point where stresses can build up. It's a weak point. Circles or circular shapes are better at distributing forces equally. The same is true in airplanes, though there the pressure is from the inside as the outside pressure drops. Early jets had square windows, and it caused several accidents as the uneven stresses over many flights led to metal fatigue and finally failure. Baby is born. How are their lungs instantly able to breathe air if they haven't been breathing air for 9 months? The placenta is what brings oxygen from mum to baby through baby's umbilical cord, that's where their belly button is, instead of through the lungs. When baby is inside mum, Blood that has oxygen in it goes to the heart, where it gets pumped out to the rest of the body. In you and me, there's a little door that has a tunnel between the right side of the heart and the lungs. Our blood that needs oxygen goes through that tunnel to the lungs and then comes back through another tunnel to the left side of the heart, where it gets pumped out to the rest of the body. In an unborn baby, the little door between the right side of the heart and lungs is closed, and the pressure behind the door is very high. It's too hard for blood to get through it, so it goes around through another secret little door to the left side of the heart. When a baby is born, there is a big shift in pressure behind that little door. When a baby takes its first breath, the secret little door slams shut. It's kind of like when a door slams shut because of wind. When that secret little door slams shut, the pressure behind the door to the lungs gets lower, and that door gets unlocked. Now the blood in the right side of the heart can go through that little door to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen, goes to the left side of the heart, and then gets pumped through the rest of the body. When baby is inside mum, the lungs still get a little bit of blood to them, but they aren't the primary place where gas exchange takes place, where oxygen and carbon dioxide move in and out. They're working on growing and producing a slippery soap-like substance called surfactant. The surfactant helps keep tiny air sacs called alveoli open and from sticking shut. The alveoli are where gas exchange takes place, otherwise known as how oxygen and carbon dioxide move in and out of your body. When the baby is born, that pressure change and sudden blood volume to the lungs and alveoli causes gas exchange to happen. And that's how baby now breathes and
What
gets
is the
difference between 5-star hotels? 1-star hotel, just the basics. Think a clean bed and a roof, nothing fancy. 2-star hotel, still simple but with a few extras like a TV or front desk service. 3-star hotel, comfortable and reliable, with things like a restaurant, gym, pool or decent lobby. 4-star hotel, stylish and higher end, offering more services like room service or concierge help. 5-star hotel, luxury all the way with top-notch comfort, personalized service, and every amenity you could imagine. There might be some overlap in amenities between stars, but that's the gist of it. Lots of hotels of all levels.
Why can't we
have
use
pools. Desert sand for construction? Most of the sand uses in construction is probably for concrete. For every aspect of construction that uses sand, you need specific types of sand. One of the most important things is the grading of the aggregates. That is the range of particle sizes. Historically, we've used river sand in concrete that usually has quite a good grading of particle sizes that makes it ideal for concrete. But that's running out because we make a lot of concrete. A lot of quarries now manufacture sand by crushing rocks. You can control the particle size doing that, but because it's crushed, it is more angular and has a higher surface area. That affects the way it interacts with water and how easily you work and place the concrete. It's not usually as good as river sand, which is a bit more rounded. Desert sand will vary by area, but a lot of deserts have very, very fine sand. That means it won't have the right distribution of particle sizes for it to be useful in concrete. For concrete, you want sand that has a specific grading, with particles ranging from about 5 mm to 63 micrometers. You don't want a lot of very fine material because the finer particles are, the higher overall surface area you have for a given mass. Again, this affects how it interacts with water. You wouldn't typically use sand from beaches or anywhere with salt, including deserts with salt flats. Salt is bad in concrete. It can cause adverse chemical reactions and also leads to steel corrosion in reinforced concrete work. Is something guaranteed to get moldy if the right conditions are met, or is it always just a chance? Mold is a fungus, a kind of life form that's different than animals, plants, or bacteria. Mushrooms are also fungi that reproduces via tiny little particles called spores that are really light and carry on the wind. There are spores everywhere on Earth at all times. You're sharing your room with millions or billions of them right now. You breathe them, and they cover every surface you've ever touched. The spores, if they land somewhere hospitable, will start to grow. Hospitable means some combination of moisture, nutrients, and temperature. It'll vary by species, and there are millions of them. But if you have those three things in the right configuration, mold will grow. Why doesn't crystallized sugar spoil? Microbes certainly would want to eat sugar. However, sugar is hygroscopic. Water gets sucked up by sugar almost instantly. It sucks it all up so the bacteria can't live. That's why it's an excellent preservative. Water activity is low. If a microorganism tried to eat the sugar, it would be in an environment with nearly no ambient water. Plus, the water inside itself would very much like to be absorbed into the dry sugar all around. Very quickly, the microbe would dry out. Two or more speakers connect to one audio device via Bluetooth. The standard Bluetooth profile, the instructions for how the Bluetooth connection is used, basically, for music, called A2DP, is designed for a one-to-one connection. That is, a phone and a speaker. There's ways to get around this. Samsung Dual Audio and Apple Audio Sharing will send the signal over two separate A2DP connections from the device, but this is a feature designed by these companies for their devices and only works on BT5+. There's also a relay method where if you have a number of compatible speakers, each one could both receive and rebroadcast the Bluetooth signal to the next speaker. Bose and Sony do this. As you can imagine, there's a certain point where a speaker down the line, and any after it, will be noticeably out of sync with the first speakers due to BT latency. Each device that broadcasts the BT signal needs bandwidth, a radio, and some CPU time to run the whole thing. If you try to stuff multiple BT connections onto a single radio or CPU, one of them is going to hit a bottleneck at a certain point. Theoretically, you could create a product with several radios and enough processing power to run them all, but you'd also need a way to ensure they're all timed correctly with each other too, which is probably the harder part. And even then, you're still going up against congestion of the 2.4 GHz spectrum, especially with everything coming out of one localized source, even if it has multiple radios. Chairs, tables are automatically stable and don't wobble. Why is four legs the default? Because a three-legged chair is only stable until it gets bumped. A four-legged chair can be bumped a lot harder until it falls over. While three-legged chairs don't wobble, they do tip over easier if you lean in them. This can be fixed by making the leg span really wide, but that makes them kind of inconvenient. On the other hand, four legs might wobble, but they don't tip as easy, allowing them to be slimmer and fit better at the dinner table. Why do racewalkers compete with their elbows elevated and generally look odd? Racewalking has two important rules to prevent you from running or jogging. One foot must be in contact with the ground at all times. When your leading leg touches the ground, it must remain straight until your body passes over it. No knee bend allowed. In other words, you have to walk like you would normally walk. So how do you walk, but really fast? You eventually hit a point where the only way to make your legs move any faster is to use your hips and abs to help, which is why they have that strange, sassy walk. To counterbalance the hips, you swing your arms. The arms are bent at 90 degrees for a faster swing and to reduce the swelling in your hands. Why don't hurricanes cross the equator? Think of throwing a ball from the equator to the North Pole with a superhuman throw. The Earth spins to the east, so the ball will seem like it's traveling west as the Earth rotates beneath it. If that was to keep turning, it would be a counterclockwise rotation. If you threw the ball to the South Pole, then you get a clockwise rotation. That's the Coriolis force effect. For a hurricane, it would have to start rotating the opposite way it started to be able to cross the equator. But that would violate conservation of angular momentum. Things that spin one way stay spinning that way. For the hurricane, that would mean all the energy that is going into making it a hurricane would be needed to first stop it and then start it rotating the other way. But if all the energy goes into turning it around, there's none left to keep it being a storm. Salt bring out flavor in everything. Salt enhances flavor by acting on both our senses and the food itself. On the tongue, sodium ions activate specific channels that not only create a salty taste, but also suppress bitterness and boost sweetness, making foods taste more balanced. In food, salt changes protein structures and draws out water through osmosis, releasing aroma compounds that strengthen flavor perception, since much of flavor comes from smell. It also helps meat retain moisture and improves texture. And because sodium is essential for nerve and muscle function, our brains are hardwired to find it rewarding, which makes foods with salt seem more flavorful.